Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadia Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I'm so excited to celebrate with you today the one and only Cameron Allen. Now, I know you've seen Cameron on my channel so many times now because he is one of my absolute favorites. He is so brilliant, and he is emerging more and more, like right in front of my eyes. I've seen him become one of these world leaders in medical astrology and particularly holistic health astrology. And of course, you know that Cameron is back at Synchronicity University. You've got a little time left to choose your tuition rate, but Cameron has taught these previous courses before, and he's building on them that much more, having to do with holistic health astrology, and in particular, Planetary Remedies. This is where holistic health astrology becomes that much more real, something you can use, something that empowers you to move towards a better state of well-being. So I'm so excited to talk about all of that and so much more with my dear friend, somebody who's been a healer in my life, Cameron. Welcome, Cameron. Thank you for being here.
Hey Nadia, it's so good to see you and hear your voice and be in your presence again. And also, it's always just so nice to be here with everyone at Synchronicity University. And I'm really excited to teach this class coming up next month. Yeah, I'm feeling really, alive and like lit up in my body about it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, because I know it is your specialization to look at holistic health astrology. And I know I've come to you over the years at times. And so we'll talk about that in just a little bit because I know people who are watching this, especially as soon as it's published. I wasn't on camera for a while there, so I'm going to be touching on that a little bit with Cameron a little bit later. But what I really love about this moment and this class, as soon as I heard the title, I was like, of course, this is why we practice astrology, to empower ourselves. And this has been such a part of our tradition that we forget sometimes that astrology was practiced by doctors, and we're looking at going back millennia. And it was done so that people could figure out the best remedies to use. And in your own way and in a modern way, you're bringing that ancient understanding to us now. And so tell me about that, like this understanding that you have of the history of understanding planetary remedies and more.
Yeah, and so this is like a really big topic, right? But what I would say about the planetary remedies and also just making it clear, a lot of the things that I've integrated into my practice have been through my own process and development. Although, of course, obviously, there's so many astrological ancestors that have like helped me come to where I'm at. But a lot of the ways that I've integrated all of it has been like through my process with the people here in Memphis, Tennessee. So I just want to give a shout out to everybody here in Memphis, Tennessee for holding space for the deep trust that they've had in me throughout this whole process in and of itself. But when it comes to astrological and planetary remedies specifically, the first way that I began thinking about it was just from a more psychological perspective, coming in from a evolutionary astrology lens, you know, somebody thinking about astrology, something that I was noticing a lot was how people would how people call it like doom scrolling, right? Like people doom scroll on Instagram or something like that. Well, sometimes people do that with astrology, right? They're kind of like scrolling through the transits and like looking like, oh no, when is something going to come and get me kind of energy. And so one of the first things I was doing was like trying to create a book list for people, right? Like when this transit comes up or when this planet is like really highlighted or emphasized in someone's life, like what is a book that they could read or even just quotes that they could read that would like help their psyche be able to digest or process something that would correspond to what that planet was inviting, whether that invitation was a square that's a challenge or that invitation was an opposition or a trine or a sextile, maybe it was more easeful, but just being able to put our gaze onto something that associates with the planet as that planet gazes upon us. And by doing that, understanding the relationship in a deeper way that allows for more cohesion and connection in the experience. Because we all know, Like someone that I just met 2 days ago, I'm going to have a different connection and relationship with them than somebody I've known for 20 years. If somebody's being rude to me today that I just met yesterday, I'm going to feel some type of way about that. But some of the people that I hold dearest to my heart, like sometimes they can really be dry and sometimes they can seem rude, but I know their heart because I've had this connection with them. And so that brings like a remedy into that relationship and that connection. So that's one way that I've looked at it. Also, I have like looked a lot into like Vedic astrology for remedies. So like the idea of practicing mantras, the ideas of the gem therapy and stuff like that has also been something I've incorporated a lot. And again, that was a lot in a lot of ways. It was in my own process, but like taking, congealing, thinking about, contemplating the ways in which they thought about those things. But more recent, and well, also planetary remedies. I mean, I would be like remiss not to talk about herbs. Like that's like one that actually maybe was the first thing. It wasn't books, it was actually herbs because the plants were the ones that sent me to the planets. And so also just the remedies of the planet correspondences and like being able to understand how to think about those things is something that's been really big. And lately it's been about planetary embodiment, or just we could say embodiment in general. And so how does Saturn want to take shape in my body? How does Jupiter want to take shape in my body? How does Mercury want to take shape in my body? And being able to express that and move that so that I can stay in progress with the progressions of the planets or the transits of the planets, let's say. So those are some ways that I like to think about it, but also just like understanding the planetary energetics is like a really strong bottom line of all those things. Like, is it cold? Is it hot? Is it wet? Is it dry? And I know we've talked about those things before, but in this class, we're gonna go like really deep into that, and even I would say like move into processes with that, right? So like not just thinking about progress of, oh, now I have this information and I get it. It's like let's drop into a process and be able to smell the planets, taste the planets, hear the planets, feel the planets, see the planets in a way that actually moves through us. So that's some things that I would say about it. I mean, there's so much more there now that I'm like going on this rant, but yeah, that's what
I
I'll say.
love it. We are at our best when we go on a rant, actually, as I know, because you have a lot of air in your chart and so do I. So it's like when we get into that flow, I think that's when we're able to bring forward wisdom that isn't necessarily of our conscious mind and our consciousness. It's like that's when we feel like we're tapping into that ancestor knowledge and roots that are there that help us to bring forward in our own modern way these really ancient traditions. And I know that you're a lot like me in that you feel that sense of being an old soul. And I think that collectively more people feel that than ever of being older souls than ever before. More of us are older souls than ever before. And because of that, we're that much more open to understanding how we can take these practices that go back millennia and have them be relevant and fit into all that we understand about what it is to be human today, which is very different than even not that much longer ago. But you said a few things that I found so interesting. So you said about giving people quotes. And the first thing I thought was, well, that's a mantra, right? You give a person a quote and it becomes like a type of mantra. And it's ultimately to align their energy, right? Their vibration, their thoughts, which is a wonderful way to use the chart. But also because you're talking about how now you're getting deeper into Vedic astrology. And so, I'm from a South Asian family. And growing up, there were different Vedic astrologers in my life, right, over the years, because really, I have ancestors who certainly practiced all kinds of esoteric arts, but my mom, my aunts, they were more like fans, right? They were fans of astrologers and psychics and things. So I got exposed to a lot of these different types of people. And it's fascinating that if you go to South Asia, in South Asia, there are basically three main religions. So there's Hinduism, Islam, and Sikhism. And then there's a Christian minority. And there's also like Zoroastrian small minority as well. And so when we look at the South Asian diaspora, it's very varied in their spiritual understanding. But even though Indian astrology comes from the Vedas, and when you go to a Hindu Vedic astrologer, he will look at the chart and he'll, say, okay, you need this stone, you need these prayers, and he'll give you prayers from the Vedas. It's fascinating that in South Asia, you see how astrology is a living practice because I have seen people have Vedic readings, but they get, you know, um, Islamic passages from the Quran, or they'll get biblical passages to repeat. I remember my mom being told to write it out and put it in water and drink it, and that she should do that for a number of days. And of course, stones, right? Stones is a really big deal to like align your energy and wear it on certain fingers. And to me, that represents how alive astrology is and how you and I, and especially in the context of this conversation, what you are doing by taking this ancient wisdom and helping people now to learn it, modern mystical people to learn it in the understanding of their realities. Well, this is what it is to be an astrologer. This is what it's been to always be an astrologer, because it is a living practice and it is there to empower us.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I love that. And I can see how, yeah, like I love that, no matter what, when we look back to the ancients, sometimes we kind of have a tendency to like think of it as like, oh, this is how they practice or this is how they did things. But there was always like this like combining like of different metropolitan areas or ideas and like being synthesized and like upgraded or like moved forward. And so really we're just continuing on that legacy in a lot of different ways. And something that I found really interesting for myself is the more that I am going back and looking at the old texts and stuff like that, the more I'm able to bring it to people in this modern context, from an experiential place, from a place of I want you to actually be able to like know what these energies are about before you even necessarily go and just do this with other people. It's like I want you to, yeah, embody these planets. I want you to embody these energies. I want you to be curious about, if you think ruby is your stone, like have you carried it with, like Judith would always say, do like a 2 week trial process, right? Like have you carried that stone with you? Like things like that I find are like really, really important in these times, especially because a lot of the spiritual stuff that we have going on these days is kind of like I create my own reality, I do whatever I want to do, and there's space and place for that. But I think sometimes when people go in that direction and in a way that isn't necessarily rooted in an education and an understanding of how the energy works, sometimes they just overlook certain things that are very simple. And so just inviting people to like come back into the wisdom of the ancient past, but in the modern context with all the like innovation that we have going on now. And so yes, I'm so like ready to feel into, because yeah, because even now that I'm talking about it, like I can even feel like I kind of even want to like place the gemstones and like a few other things like just like over here for a second and like really look people in their eyes and ask them, when was the last time you sipped in mercury? And what does mercury taste like? And what happens when mercury comes through your essence? Or what happens when mercury goes over your moon? Do you feel like you can actually feel mercury? And when you're able to do things like that, then not only can you more clearly get a remedy, but also, I just feel like the way the remedy moves through you allows it to be something that you can carry with you for the rest of your life, rather than, oh yeah, I tried this one time and this happened.
Wow. And it's interesting to consider as well that the ways in which we are now inspired to be like our own guru. And I think that's part of why students are drawn to astrology, why they're drawn to this wisdom. Because even though, like, I honestly, between us and everyone watching this, sometimes when I think of you, Cameron, I think of you as like someone who's been like a guru in my life in a way, right? Because you've been somebody I've come to for wisdom and understanding and insight, and it's meant so much. But I think because I know you have all this air in your chart in particular, you're an Aquarian like me. What we'd much rather do is awaken the guru in other people rather than to be that guru in people's lives, right? And you talked about connecting with the wisdom of the planets, that relationship. I am so big a proponent on that relationship. One of my books, which is Prayers to the Sky, that whole book is about that relationship. And it's about cultivating that. And I mean, I call it astrological magic light. So it's kind of an introduction to how to create that relationship. And it's because it's something I did. I remember way back in the day, what I would do is every year would have a planet. Like every year would be like, okay, this year, this is my boyfriend, right? Like, and the year that Pluto was my boyfriend, oh my God, that was a very not easy year. What was I thinking? But immediately after that, the following year, I was like, okay, Pluto, thank you. Now I'm going with Jupiter. We'll be over here on the side. Thank you. Your lessons will stay with me. Now Jupiter's going to be my boyfriend for a while. And I literally would cultivate that relationship. I would get, like, I would read up on their myths. I would get little mythological interpretations of art or sculpture, and I would, connect with their herbs and their colors and things like that. And yeah, it's interesting as well. The year that I did Mars, that year I felt inspired to train for a half marathon, and that was also the year that as I was training, I went so hard that I ended up spraining my ankle. And then anyways, even with that, like that was like a week before the marathon. I ran the marathon anyways, like an idiot. I ran the marathon. I was so determined. And then towards the end of that year, I had I just hurt my knee so much because I wasn't listening to my body and myself. I wasn't balancing the energy, right? And so that's where the remedy wasn't Mars. I was like, no, Mars, Mars, Mars. Yeah, it's all about Mars. But there's also that sense of balance, right? Like Mars has his counter of Venus, the sun has its counter of the moon. And I wasn't thinking about that. And I ended up like, they say too much of anything isn't good for you. I learned that, certainly. I've learned that with my relationship with the planets. I've learned that with my relationship with partners and in love. Like, too much of a particular way of going about things, it takes people off balance. And I really love that about understanding the astrological chart, is that so much of it, I mean, you think about how these ancient astrologers who were doctors used the chart, medieval astrologers who were doctors, doctors. Um, it was about bringing balance to the humors, like you touched on very briefly a moment ago. It was about understanding that we have these different drives or elements, for lack of a better word, humors they were called, but we have these different parts of us. And you have to be able to recognize and see what's needed in a given moment. And especially at a time when a person is like in I don't want to say crisis, but like a moment that asks for them to focus on healing through something very specific, like a person, place,
Yes,
thing, or situation, especially physical. It really will get your attention.
that was beautiful. And like, I don't like, I feel like I have things to say in reflection, but it's like also just want everybody to like maybe even like rewind that for a second and just like take that in again, because that was perfection. Like that's exactly what I'm talking about there. Like everything you just said, like just like being able to like going into this class, like just the approach that I'm taking is like I want everybody to come into I kind of don't even want to call it a class. I kind of want to call it a container or call it like an incubator.
A
Yeah. And like have
space.
people like
Yeah.
yeah, and like have people come into it, and when they come out of it, it's like feel like they can see through that lens, and life starts to animate in that manner. Exactly what you said, right? And like being able to see when the energy is going too far, and inherently knowing how to just start to lean to the other side or to another planet, or to invite another energy in to come co-mingle with it to create harmonization. And so like, yeah, you said that so beautifully. Like, and like it just feels so good to hear somebody say it in a way where like my body's like, oh yeah, like you get it, like you really get it.
Now, I have gotten it kicking and screaming, meaning it has been a hard lesson and I'm still in the process of it. And so I mention sometimes in my videos when I talk about you and I say, hey, Cameron's coming and he's amazing. I talk about how much you've helped me over the years when I've been able to come to you. And so I was literally like kind of saving something I wanted to talk about because so that people could see like what kind of insight, what kind of advice you bring, and how it is that you've helped me in the past to find that sense of some balance. And so I remember I was telling you like last year or something. So I don't know if people realize this. Maybe it's the flag in the background. Maybe it's the flag on my shirt. I am in Brazil right now, right? And all of these give it away, I know. But the interesting thing is Brazil becomes my Chiron line, basically. Chiron and Saturn becomes more dominant, whereas elsewhere in the Latin world, it becomes about my moon. And so elsewhere in the Latin world, it becomes about my relationships with others. And it's so easy to connect with other people, and especially in terms of relationships. But here I find every time I've come, this is the third time I've been here, and every time I have a healing crisis that happens. And so the first time I was here last year, it was like like generational trauma healing that I went through. And it was really like, as healing can sometimes be, it was really painful and really hard. And I remember so much stuff coming up, and just going to the beach and like crying, at the beach and talking to the sun, and letting that be part of my healing was so important to me. And then the second time I came here was immediately after a breakup. And that relationship, like it meant so much to me. And like I never really talk about myself on camera, but in my own life I do. But this was such a deeply significant type of bond. And for it to just, you know, like in a very Plutonian way of a sense, just kind of go away. Like in an instant, it just felt like poof, it was gone. And it was so incredibly painful. And I came here to heal that part of me that has to do with emotions and love for myself and ways in which to accept love, right? All of those lessons, relationships, understanding that as well. So this time I come, and what happens? Well, I'm here like literally a couple of weeks or so, and I get an injury. And the injury, it's interesting. Again, this is my exact Chiron return. Chiron stationed on my natal Chiron. And I remember you telling me, because I was, talking to you after the last time I interviewed you, and you said, do some type of ritual to honor and be conscious with Chiron. And I didn't really do that. I have to be honest. I didn't really do that. And so what happens? I get an injury, and I'm actually really, really fortunate because it was superficial. It was just the skin, but it was right on top of the base of my spine. So it wasn't inside, it
Mm.
wasn't the bones or the muscle, it was the skin. And so actually I'm super fortunate. I needed 17 stitches. It looks like, it looked like a tramp stamp, as they say, right? I don't need to go to a tattoo parlor. I have this, tattoo from Chiron, basically. But what happened afterwards was I had a reaction to something and I swelled up, and it forced open the stitches. It was incredibly painful. And then I went to a specialist, and it took him about a week or two to bring the swelling down. And then he closed it and it opened again. And then I went back to the specialist, and I tell you, these doctors are amazing. I'm so grateful for that. But basically, he said to me, look, I need you to be still. And he sewed it back up. He put a negative pressure bandage on it to try and make it not move and stay still. And you can imagine it was like this room that I'm in right now. I really did not leave this room for a period of about 3 weeks. And for over a month, the only time I left this room was to see the doctor. And so that was, so painful. But then, it was like last week or so that I went to the doctor. He took out the last stitches and he's like, I know you're anxious to get out into the world. So he cleared me to travel, even though I still had some open wounds. I was like, okay, great. Yes. So I book a flight. I'm like, I'm out of here. That's it. Brazil, I love you, but I'm done with you, Chiron. This is some bull. I remember being so emotional, like just being here and just thinking, I am a person who lives. I am a person who runs and walks and dances and swims and lives and embraces life and moves and travels. Like to be forced to just stop was so hard for me. But anyways, I was glad to be cleared and I was still on painkillers, but I got my ticket. I went to the airport last week and I go to the counter and he asked me for some type of vaccine. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so there's a type of vaccine that you need to get if you're going to go to most of South America when you're flying out of Brazil. And I had no idea about this, and they wouldn't let me board the plane. It was like, sorry, no, I'll give you the credit for your ticket, but you can't board the plane. And so what happened? 3 hours after saying goodbye to everybody, hugging everybody at the hotel, I'm back in this room. And I was like, oh my God, if ever the universe was trying to say, Nadia, you have to be still, you have to stop. I mean, it's just mind blowing to me how sometimes the universe is just so freaking clear, right? Okay, so I share all this with you because I'm chalking it up to Chiron. I think, Pluto in Aquarius has something to do with it because so much went topsy turvy for me. As soon as Pluto went into Aquarius, that was the first healing crisis I had in 2023 when I was here. And then again, when I came back, it was like almost to the day that I was back and everything I went through. And now here we are again, right? So what is your advice? Tell me what to do. I want this to stop. Like, I mean, I could tell you all the ways in which this has sucked and it has been painful. And it has, it's a 10th house Chiron. There's been a lot of fear, fear of, you know, what I've built and who I am in a larger sense. And it's just been so many emotions. It's been very difficult. But anyways, it's almost completely closed now. I'm really excited about that. I wasn't able to sit for like a long time. I can sit again. I'm super excited about that. These are the little things. These are the little, these signposts that tell you you're on the right track. But yes, remedy me. Tell me what to do, Cameron. This is something I was waiting to ask you for because I just need to know. This sucks. Let me put it that way. It
Yeah,
sucks. Yeah.
yeah, the first thing that I'm like feeling, interestingly enough, because I haven't like recommended energy work in a long time to someone, but I'm kind of feeling like something like, I mean, not necessarily saying Reiki, but just some type of energy work feels like it's in order here. And also like just considering like even though that was not a not so subtle experience that you had, right? Because it's like ripping open and closing and ripping open, it's not so subtle. Maybe there is something subtle there that like we would want to like address with that experience. And I would be more curious to talk more with you, maybe not now, but in general, on like what emotions were coming up during that time, because that feels like it would like give me like a lot more clarity. I just have a hunch that I would get like way more clarity off of that. But energy work is the first thing, especially too because that area might be tender and maybe you still don't want to move around so much. Well, actually, I know you probably do want to move around so much, but we don't want you to move around so much. We want you to relax and stay where you're at. So even potentially like long distance energy work would be something that I would recommend, specifically because you are being continuously shown that it's time to like find some stillness.
Mm.
Also, something that I would invite in is a breathing practice. So if you're not practicing pranayama, I would definitely suggest some pranayama because oftentimes when we're always in motion, sometimes we forget how we can produce motion just through like the breathing practices, right? In like the breathing practice, it could be focused on noticing all the motion that is actually taking place when you're doing the breathing practice. Sometimes that has a tendency to allow people to feel more stillness because they don't feel like they're stir crazy and they are experiencing motion. It's just like sometimes we just have to slow down to be able to notice that there's still so much motion happening here. And even in your like supposed stillness, there it sounds like there was a lot of emotions moving. And so like also like when have you stayed still so your emotions could move rather than like you going to this place, you going to that place. That's also something I would consider to sink into a little deeper. On a remedy level, as far as like herbs go, I don't know what they have available in Brazil necessarily. Like I have some kind of ideas, but I know I have like two clients in Brazil, and there's a herb called suma root that would be something that potentially I would suggest, but I would have to ask you more questions around what's going on, what was the doctor giving you, things like this, of course, before I could actually make that recommendation. But that's the first thing that comes up for me is suma root,
Wow.
and then everything else that I'm feeling and sensing, I would wait to ask you more questions and go dropping a little further with you. Yeah.
And so you would work with, because I mean, look, I can imagine like I'm mentioning Chiron, but it might not be that at all, right? It could be something totally else that you're able to recognize from that holistic health perspective that maybe is being overlooked. And I know that a lot of the remedies that you are going to share and that you do share with people, just like you did with me right now, like these remedies are ancient. They are rooted in a certain understanding of the planets and the traditional planets in particular. But of course, because astrology is living, we have an understanding
Yeah.
now of how to work with the modern planets as well, work with Chiron as well. And so there are all these different ways in which to continue to grow and expand what it is that we might be able to understand through the chart as to what the best remedies might be. And I love that you mentioned, because my first impulse, because of my background, because growing up, it was like, oh, you need this stone. It was always about the stone first, right? You got to go to the stone. But you're so right. There's that sense of what mantras, what vibrations are you holding? And I remember my aunt, her saying to me, and my aunt Shireen, she's been on my channel a few times before, and she said to me, just go inside. I'm telling you, there's so much peace there. I'm telling you. And I got it. Like I got a glimpse, or I should say, I got glimpses of it, right? As much as an Aquarian with a grand trine in air is going to be open to that stillness, to just being inside. Um, I understood what she was saying, that there is something within that steps outside of all these little things that can end up, and sometimes big things, right? Because it felt like a really big thing. It was my physical body, and it was this reminder of being mortal when I feel like I have so much more to do in this lifetime. It was this reminder that, okay, there is something else here. There is, and I love that you mentioned earlier about, people are so quick to talk about like the law of attraction and things, and it has its place. Those are powerful tools. But I think sometimes
Mm.
it works and it ends up being a type of spiritual bypass in that you kind of are trying, you're focused in a way that's like you're missing an opportunity. And the opportunity is like a really deep, meaningful healing because you're afraid to look at what the wound actually is. And so isn't it interesting what you said about like feeling like open? Yeah, it was being exposed. You are so right. That's exactly it. I had to have a nurse here for about 3 weeks because I needed help. And so she would come every day. I couldn't, yeah, it was very, very, very hard. And so she came every day for about 3 weeks. And that was being very exposed, like it was so in my face. And yeah, that makes so much sense now that I think about it. But I guess there must be ways to be exposed but not feel torn open, right? There's got to be.
Maybe first of all, I just want to like presence, like thank you so much for like sharing this with us. I just want to presence that, like I really appreciate it. And also maybe there is a way to not feel torn open, but maybe sometimes like that's actually like what we're needing. It's like when was the last time that like I'm this invitation for everybody to just consider for themselves, like in this moment, just because you're sharing so much and it's like really like lighting me up. Like when was the last time you felt like you were torn open and you just accepted that and allowed it to be okay and not rejected that experience in and of itself? A lot of
Wow.
times when I work with Chiron or I see things happening with Chiron, it like rejection, something about rejection comes up. And sometimes it's like when we have a wound or when we're with a wound, just letting it be what it is and accepting it is something that's like actually the deepest medicine that we can have, because the Chiron wound oftentimes is about something having to do with like rejection. And oftentimes that's what we're doing perpetually when it comes to our wounds, is just like rejecting them or trying to get rid of them or trying to overcome them. And I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice by taking that approach when we could accept and integrate it and allow that to be just another thing that becomes a part of our medicine cabinet, or the thing that allows us to be able to have a more fine-tuned energetic antenna for another person when we feel them going through that experience, because we actually allowed ourselves to drop into that experience.
You asked when was the last time, and I was thinking, well, it was the breakup, right? The breakup that happened in January. That was the last time emotionally I felt so torn open. I mean, yeah, that was, I think, the last time. But I guess this time it had to be what, more personal, more visceral, or really, really being with all of it, I guess, is what part of it was. And then the opportunity, of course, is there to continue to learn from it, right? That's the thing also. I,
Mhm.
I just I feel different. Let me put it that way. I feel like something's changed in me. And when I came out of the doctor and he'd taken the stitches out, and the first thing I did was I went to like the busiest part of Rio de Janeiro, right? Centro, where they have like this huge market and everything, because I just wanted to be around life. Like that was it. I just wanted life. And I was like walking around and I just kept saying to myself, I am free. I am free. And it had been so long since I really felt that. And I felt like Plato's allegory of the cave, right? In the allegory of the cave, he talks about how um, people, they don't realize. Now I'm really sort of saying this in my own words, but basically most of us are used to like sort of being chained to a chair and staring at projections on a wall, and we see shadows and we think those shadows are reality, but that's not really the case. There's another reality that happens when you realize, wait a minute, I'm in a chair, I'm here. And there's another reality when you see the projector, go, wow, okay, that's actually a projection. And then there's a whole other reality when you take the steps to walk up the ladder that takes you into the sun, right? That sense of being in the sun and realizing what's actually real after staring at shadows for so long and thinking that was real. it is a journey, basically, right? And we see this journey play out, I mean, archetypally in so many movies and things. I'm thinking of The Matrix, for example, right? Now, for all that, I have felt like I have come out into the sun and my eyes are still adjusting. That's really how it feels right now. And it's been record
Mhm.
cold in Rio.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to like go out as much as I would like to, right? And it's just kind of it's all eerie. It's all wild. Yeah. Yeah. How is that going to show up in my work? It's a 10th house Chiron. That's the thing. And I think that's part of the fear, right? Because you have so many planets in Capricorn. I have a lot of placements in Capricorn and Saturn as well. And we care about our contribution and what we give to the world. And we care about, I think Capricorn energy cares about harnessing the sacred will and directing it and moving in a direction that you feel is meaningful to you. And so, yeah, there's a lot stirring within me now with all of that. And I can see now, as you said, the body like opening again and again. It's getting me to look at this and so much more.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and even you're here right now sharing this with all of us, and so, like, at minimum, we can take a step back and say, this is a way or this is an iteration in which it's showing up in your work, like you're allowing yourself to express this and not rejecting the part of you that might have been like, oh, let me like not say talk about this to the people, it's like, but like really just like coming here like to the forefront and like sharing it is like a beautiful thing. And also like I was when you were just talking, we can go into it a little more later for sure together, but like I saw like this process that I want to like bring you into. So I just wanted to name that. I'm excited about it because I could see something that would be like a remedy for you in this. So anyway, I just wanted to name that.
Yeah. Okay, but can you I just want people to feel like I want them to see I saw look, everybody out there, Cameron works with charts, right? And he's able to tap into charts, but then you also see here he taps into this like intuitive kind of psychic side of him too, and he's able to help connect to whatever might be happening. And there's also this real theoretical knowledge as well, where you know all the different herbs and how that plays out. You understand the core energies of the planets and the stones and the mantras and what could be suggested. And so I think this is a lot of what people can expect at your course at Synchronicity University. So once again, everybody, Cameron Allen is back at Synchronicity University. From the time this publishes, you'll have just a couple days left to choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class. This class is going to be on planetary remedies. Of course, Cameron is a world leader and emerging more and more star in the field of holistic health astrology. And he's taught a bunch of classes with us before. So if you haven't taken classes with Cameron before, he's been kind enough to offer those at that same, very limited time add-on of choose your tuition rate. So you can check all that out on synchronicityuniversity.com. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to this class because I know that this is where you really get the hands-on experience of how, in practical ways, astrology empowers us.
Yeah, in this class, I think more than any other class that not only that I've taught here, but I've ever done, like to the public, it will be like the ability to move forward. And even if you don't know about herbalism, even if you don't know about astrological magic, I really do feel like you'll have an understanding how to approach any of these things in an intelligent way where you feel like you can be self sufficient and also like given resources to like lean on to guide you, and feeling really strong in that because something that I do see is that people will gather a bunch of information but they don't know how to apply it or like they don't know how to synthesize it and put it all together. So really just like looking forward for people to come into the space and feel like really held And in this space that we're going to be holding for 5 weeks, there's going to be more back and forth discussion, so that again, like we can have these like reflections and from people, and then me give them direct advice and perspectives on how to think about it. So there won't be this, do this is the one way to do this is the one way to do that. It'll really be like the ability to navigate the spectrum in an intelligent way that is also embodied in invitations to learn how to like take yourself from wherever you're at and like really moving through a process. And I'm really like emphasizing that it's really a process oriented kind of class. And that's going to be rooted in the energetics of understanding the planets too, as well. So, yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. And again, everybody, just Cameron, I have to say, you are like, and you exemplify the best of, what I love about Synchronicity University, because you bring this, incredible quality education. You're one of the world leaders in what you do. And the classes, the wisdom, the knowledge becomes accessible to more people than it would otherwise. And I think it's so wonderful to work with you and to just continue to see you like just shining more and more. And, before I let you go, I just want to let everybody out there know as well, both Cameron and I are going to be in Australia in January. There's a huge conference taking place there just outside Brisbane. And I think that that is going to be so much fun to gather with other astrologers. And this really is like the biggest astrology party that happens in Australia. And it only happens like once every 2 years or so. So you and I both are like featured honored guest speakers. So I think it's wonderful to be your contemporary and very soon to see you there as well, Cameron.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, I know. It'll be great. And thank you again, Cameron, for this moment with you. And thank you, everybody out there, for watching. Until we connect again, take care. Bye.